5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Action!
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so pumped for today's interview. We have an American with us, an educated woman. So I want to make sure that obviously you have to subscribe, like if you want to, but make sure you grab a pen and paper because we've got some good data today. And it's an emotional subject as well. And we're going to have a lot of fun with it. Now, across the world, certainly in my own experience, in my travels, you do have such a thing called the family structure. You have the family structure as it is in the China. I've got students in Saudi Arabia. The way they talk about family is beautiful. And of course, you know where I come from. And then again, I think to myself, despite the fact that we all have different ideals, different ideas of how a family structure should be, you know, we all do it differently. We all come from different cultures. There's nothing wrong with that. And if there's one thing we have in common, whether or not you come from America, you know, Australasia, South America, a continent of Africa, or the North Pole, South Pole, you know, number one, our real wealth is our health, all right? And our future is in our children, and we all agree on that. Today, our guest is in fact of the philosophy, perhaps, whereby she understands that she doesn't want children and won't be having any. Say hello. You are from America, yes or no?
Yes, I'm from America.
Very good, very good. And if I'm not mistaken, before we begin, you and I had in fact first met on a ferry. Is this true or false?
It's a ferry or a bus. I don't quite remember which one.
Yeah. I thought bus actually, but it was the bus from, oh God, what's how do you call it? Was that a Stranraer or Cairn Ryan? It was in Scotland, of course. I took the ferry from Larne. Oh.
Belfast to Edinburgh, at least for me. So somewhere.
That's correct. Actually, yeah. You can get like a direct bus ticket from the Belfast to the Edinburgh, which includes a ferry. So you have been to Belfast, is this true?
Yes, I've been to Belfast. I've done Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, and Norway for a couple days.
Oh, nice. Well done. Norway's a good addition. Normally, I would say that when a tourist comes to the island of Ireland, they have a tendency to go to Dublin, but then like not visit Belfast. What did you think of Belfast?
I liked Belfast. It was definitely interesting. I made some good friends at hostels. I made, a good friend on the way to Edinburgh, but personally, I really like Galway.
Galway's a nice spot, actually. Yeah. There's another good county, actually, County Clare, which has a beach called Lahinch, which is really good for surfing. And you've also got the Cliffs of Moher, actually, and you've also got County Mayo, actually, beside it. What did you see in Galway?
Well, I have friends in Galway, and I originally went over when I was 16 with my family. The Irish side of my family on my mom's side actually comes from Galway. And
nice.
I will, coronavirus permitting, be attending a college in Galway for the next 3 years. So.
Oh, that's interesting. I was actually talking to a man from Donegal, maybe a year ago or something, I forget now. It was just a chance meeting. And we were just talking about living costs in the Republic have actually skyrocketed, in particular in Dublin. But he had said that in Galway City, you're looking at maybe €800 a month or something for a room, which I thought was ridiculous. And so too did he. So I hope that when you do go, the costs aren't too bad on you.
Well, that's cheaper than where I am right now.
Goodness.
Yeah, cost of living in the United States of America is.
Yeah. And
not fun.
It's tricky. For the Northern Ireland, you had said that you had visited the Giant's Causeway.
Yes. I don't know. It was just really interesting. I really liked, the rock formations and thinking about how that happens naturally. And honestly, just like not only that, but just different things around the world that is amazing that, this happens in nature. So like in Giant's Causeway, it's the rock structures, but, you know, in other places it could be, you know, whatever else. Even here, like the formation of the Grand Canyon through like water is crazy to me.
Yeah, actually, that Grand Canyon, that is quite interesting. Actually, yeah, natural processes. What I found interesting about the Giant's Causeway is that those, like, I just call them pillars. Like you're walking on them, but they're like not square, hexagon pillars formed through like heat and pressure and whatnot. But what's interesting is that it happened naturally. And if you take a look at the planet Saturn, there seems to be a North Pole, which somehow is also hexagonal, which is kind of cool. So hexagons do pop up more often than not. Like, so getting onto our topic, we are not here to tell people that they shouldn't have children. Rather, we're here to discuss the concept of not having children. And you've got such good data, such good research. A lot of it had blown me away. And I just thought to myself, yeah, look, let's open up with the fact that the concept of having children, there's like a woman's element to this. So the earliest kind of revelation that I had where I started to actually understand this was when I was either 17 or 18. I was working in it was a shop that sold soaps and perfumes and such before I went to university. And I went into the coffee room, and it's a predominantly female environment. And what had happened was the women were talking about childbirth over their cups of coffee and such, and about how painful it was, how horrible it was, and just like openly talking between each other, you know, like wee hens. And I remember saying, like, I had understood what they meant. I forget how I worded it, but they were like, no, you don't understand what it means to give birth to a child. And I had said, like, well, yeah, I do. It's really painful. I kind of don't want it, if you know what I mean. I'll never forget it. But then they were like, yeah, okay, but you're not a woman. They were like, the only way you can know what this feels like is when you do give birth, basically. And they're like, you will never give birth, so you will never know what it actually feels like. Which, you know, I didn't realize. My mind, I remember just thinking, oh yeah, I don't, and I will never know what it actually feels like. I can talk about childbirth, about how painful it might be, but I'll never actually know what it feels like. And I feel blessed actually for that. So on that note, can you give us your genesis here, please?
So I guess just real quick before that, I just want to say this, I am child-free by choice. It is a choice, and I respect other women who choose to have children. Like, again, this is about choices. This is just my personal choice. And here's how I came by it. So I had a not so great childhood. I'm not going to go into it, but it was not exactly fun. And
Happens.
yeah. And really it's kind of, that's what started it, was that you know, when you don't have a great childhood, you're focused on other things, you know, you're focused on survival, you're focused on, you know, living in that moment and surviving moment to moment. And you don't really get to grow as much as a person. You know, you don't get to figure out who you are when your focus is so much on just survival. So I, you know, growing up and coming into adulthood, you know, I realized what I was missing, and I wanted to kind of experience myself in a way that I knew that I wouldn't be able to if I had children. Another big thing is that abusive patterns do repeat. You know, unless you're really on top of that, they can absolutely repeat, and I don't ever want to hurt a child the way that I was hurt. So for me, you know, I just want to take that out. And more than that, I'm not a kid person. I mean, like, I'm nice to children, and
Oh, of course.
yeah, you know, unless, you know, they're little, you know, but generally, you know, I'm very nice to children, but I don't particularly enjoy them. For example, I've never had baby fever in my entire life. I was probably inoculated against it. I have had puppy fever with my dog, but otherwise, I don't look at a baby and think, oh my God, I want one. I don't look at a baby and think, I just want to hold it. I'm more like, oh, it's a baby. Good for you. You enjoy that baby. But yeah, even when I hold them, I have to sit there and go, what's the socially acceptable time before I can hand this back? And like making that, and I say it, but whatever gender the baby is, it's just,
of course. Yeah.
It's just not for me. And although this might be selfish, I want to live my life. I want to experience my life. I want to go traveling, and kids are expensive and, they take a lot of care. I want to, be able to pursue my dreams and my passions without having to, worry about this other life in ways that I didn't when I was younger. But, I do know people who went through not so great childhoods that do want kids, and that's absolutely acceptable. It's just, for me, it's not. And I actually have talked to mental health professionals, healing from everything that I went through. And they absolutely agree that, being child-free by choice is a good option for me. It's, psychologically, mental health standpoint, makes a lot of sense.
I'm really glad you said that. I mean, it's not the first time I've heard something to this. There was a long time ago where I had a discussion with a woman, and she'd said something very similar to yourself, actually. Now, years later, I'll tell you that, she is married. She does have a child, I think one child or two. So, she had said she was adamant on not having children. And later on, she now has children. And, it's a good thing, too. For what you're saying there, I would add that, sorry, excuse me 1 second. Excuse me, sorry, so thirsty. I would add that I respect that you have been able to sit down and calculate this mathematically. You seem to be taking a very mathematical approach. There's emotion to it, but it's a mathematical approach. You've thought about this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've absolutely, it's been something that I've sat with and really, thought about. And I mean, honestly, it helps that I'm going to be 30 next month, and I haven't ever been in like a very committed relationship. I've never been married. I've never been engaged. So maybe it also helps that I've never had, someone else in my life saying, I want to have a child with you. Mm-hmm. But so there hasn't been any pressure from, a partner, but it has given me time to think, and I'm comfortable in my decision now, and not that there can't be older mothers, but I'm closing in on, window of fertility a bit.
Oh God. Yeah. That does seem to be a click and talk of sorts. Yeah. Go ahead.
I've never experienced the biological clock phenomena either. Like, I hear people talking, or I've heard women talking about, their biological clock starts kicking in and they just really want to have a baby and they feel like they have to. And I've never experienced that. So I think that's probably a sign.
Now, before we get into the data and the details, what would you say to women that want to have children? Like, are you here to tell us that we just shouldn't have children, or what are you thinking?
I believe in choice. I believe parenthood should be a choice, and for people that want to have children and want to be good parents and want to, provide a good life for their kid, I'm absolutely for that. In my personal opinion, I think children should be loved and cherished and wanted. And, if you can do that, the world needs good parents. And I fully support that. But I also think it's important to recognize when you don't want kids, when you don't think that that's going to be happy path for you, because, like, kids need to be, like I said, loved and cherished. And if you're not going to be able to do that as well, then you shouldn't be having kids.
Yeah, it's an
happy life
interesting
for
point. There was there's a field of philosophy called pessimism, and the quote that I have here, I tried to find it actually. I read it like maybe 5 years ago or something.
Mhm.
I can't find it today. Folks, the audience at home, if you find this quote or if you know what quote I'm talking about, can you please just pop it in the comments below? But I think there's a guy who's like a nuclear physicist. I think he's called Oppenheimer or something. But then this philosopher is called like Schopenhauer. So it's a similar name. But what I think he was the one who had said this, but like I say, I can't find the quote, and it is pessimistic. The quote goes, if you want to end human suffering, then you must stop having children. What's your take on that?
I think that there's a couple takes. I think for sure there's going to be suffering, as life is, or life is pain, but life can also have a lot of happy things in it.
Okay, yes, Jesus, yes.
But I think you should be setting up your kid for the happiest life possible. So someone like me shouldn't have children. I can't guarantee that I'm gonna be the best mother, or that I'd be emotionally the best mother if I'm in this situation. Even if I try my hardest, kids are probably gonna pick up on all the emotional and psychological struggles that I'm having. Even if I love them, it's gonna be difficult, and I wouldn't want to put that on them. I wouldn't want them to pick up anything from that for me. And on a global scale, we do have to worry about climate change and resources, and we need to make sure that the world is going to be there and inhabitable for future generations. I think it's something to definitely think about, especially if you want people to have children. We got to make sure that there's a world for them.
Yeah, this is true. And we're looking at Mars at the minute, and I really do wonder how many bloodlines of ours are actually going to get to Mars. I mean, I don't think there's going to be many. I mean, everyone thinks your child's going to go to Mars. Like, I don't see it myself, to be honest with you, So look, the concept of like deciding to not have children, I would imagine that there'll be people who you will have talked to about this. There are those that support you. There's those that maybe, still support you but disagree with what you're doing. Like, that's okay. The question here is, has anyone shamed you or looked down upon you or tried to make you feel bad for the decisions that you're making for yourself and your future?
So there's kind of two things. One, when I've said, hey, I just don't want to have kids, I've had a lot of people saying, oh, you'll change your mind. Oh, just wait until you meet the right man. And not necessarily, the right man for me is going to be okay with, having not having human children. But then the other thing is that so it's July now. In January, I had my fallopian tubes out. Which is, a permanent sterilization. There's two ways that you can do it. You can either get a tubal ligation, you can get them cut or cauterized, or you can get them out completely. I got them out completely. That removes the chance for fallopian cancer. And also it lowers the risk of ectopic pregnancies, which if you don't know what that is, it's when a fertilized egg implants somewhere other than the uterus. It can be a very life-threatening condition, and as far as I know, there's only been one recorded instance of there being a successful pregnancy bringing a child to term without death. And normally, these pregnancies, they become life-threatening at a very, very early stage. You're not talking about, 6-month fetus, you're talking, weeks, if not maybe 1 or 2 months before it becomes life-threatening. So obviously having my tubes out reduces that risk even more. I still can technically get pregnant if somehow, like personality change, I decided that I wanted to have a baby naturally. I could do in vitro. I still have everything else. It's just like the roadway. So I can't get pregnant in the traditional method. And having my tubes out, having the surgery, I think was a bigger, like a bigger thing for people to swallow, because there wasn't the, oh, she'll just change her mind, like this is a permanent thing. My parents had issues with it. My dad, he was okay with me being childless by choice, but for him, it's kind of like cutting off options is a thing for him personally, and so he saw this as me cutting off options. But and he, he talked to me about it, and he gave me things to think about, and he'd be like, well, what if you go and you meet the perfect man and he wants children? And I'm like, I don't, I think having a child for someone else when I really don't want to do that is only going to lead to, issues with the relationship and could lead to a nasty divorce. Only now you have innocent lives being caught up in that and being hurt by it.
Yes, actually, Jesus, yeah.
So I'm like, no, and I've had, people definitely, luckily in my peer group, a lot of people agree with me and think it's great. And even friends who have had kids. One of my friends wanted me to have a no baby shower for my surgery, before my surgery.
Oh, that's nice. That's like nice, actually.
A baby shower.
Yeah.
But we'd have, it just like different spins on all the games, and there'd be a lot of alcohol because no one would be pregnant. But I also had, luckily, a good experience in terms of getting my surgery. A lot of women, they have difficulty getting the surgery. A lot of times it's, they want you to be married and have, 2 or more kids and be older. And sometimes it's even they want your husband to sign off on it. And so as an unmarried, childless woman, I was very lucky. My insurance covered it. I'm on Medicaid. My insurance covered it. I kind of went in with I have 2 mental health care professionals ready to fight my way in and to get it. But luckily my OB-GYN, my gynecologist, she was okay with it. She's like, are you sure? Maybe you want to try, IUDs or something? I'm like, no, I want it out. And then the surgeon, he was okay with it. And every time they're asking, are you 100% sure? Because it's irreversible. So, I mean, although they were asking me at every stage, which I think was appropriate, they weren't discouraging me. And then, even day of, they asked, but it was, I did not hit as many roadblocks as other women did. I have a friend who actually found a doctor who was willing to do it for her. But her insurance, which wasn't state insurance, refused to cover it.
Oh, Jesus. How much was it? How much was it?
Oh, how much was it? I don't even know, but I mean, it's a surgery that it's not being covered. On state insurance, I paid $3 for mine. I was able to use the 5 and get change as my copay. So that was, crazy. That it was that affordable for me, but
it's good that it's not affordable. If it's something that you want, then you want it to be affordable.
Yeah, and luckily I was on state insurance, so it was affordable for me. Other women don't have that luxury, especially if they don't have insurance or they're on private insurance. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think I'm definitely thankful that my road to getting my surgery was so free of roadblocks in terms of from doctors and, choosing to go through with the procedure to getting the procedure. And it was real quick. It was in vitro, I was in and out in a day, outpatient surgery.
Just quickly, so what does in vitro, I've heard it so often.
Sorry, not in vitro.
Is that non-invasive, is it?
Oh, sorry, laparoscopic, not in vitro.
Okay.
Laparoscopic. So it was laparoscopic, which means that they just had like a couple incisions, just went in and out. It was, in and out within a day.
This is what you want.
Yeah. So it was, I got it. And then I think I showed up at like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and I was out, by like 2 or 3.
And you had taken time to consider all of this over a few weeks,
Oh,
few months before you went in? Like, what time frame?
Probably a few years, because I wanted it, and then it, I'm almost 30, so it was a lot easier for me to say, hey, I was 30, likely not going to want kids. And I think if I had gone, for example, when I was 25, there may have been more roadblocks than, coming in at almost 30.
And do you, I feel like you have touched upon this, but it sounds like the people that helped enable this had in fact kept asking you if you'd, like, they kept helping you double check and everything. Is that right? It's not just run straight through like it's a roller coaster. It's like, are you sure you want to do this? Step by step by step. Is that right?
Yeah, I had to sign paperwork. That was like, and it was actually important too. It's like, no one is coercing you into this. So I had to, and they definitely were like, this is what you want. No one's coercing you into this. This is a personal decision. I'm like, yes, absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that.
People tried to coerce me out of it, but my dad was close to, he was definitely like, well, what if you wait a little bit, or I'll help you pay for your surgery? I'm like, no, I want to get it done while I'm on Medicaid, so that, it's $3. And he definitely came around, and he's fully supportive.
So moving on to the costs of childbirth, you had mentioned this before to me, and you had quoted me some costs, which are going to come up on the screen now. The costs to childbirth in America, in your state. It sounds like maybe each state's different, maybe. And I remember the costs being like so high, and I was like, "There's no way this is true." But of course, you gave me good data, and the figures had shocked me. I mean, we're looking at, I'll tell you in a second, but when I seen the figures, I phoned up my friend who works for the NHS. She is in fact a doctor. She may be a surgeon. It's been a long time since we talked, in fact. But I had said, look, how much does it actually cost to have a child under the NHS, the National Health Service, which covers England, Scotland, Wales, and then Northern Ireland? And I was like, how much does it actually cost? And she's like, zero. It costs £0, 0 pence. Like, why would you even ask me that? And I was like, oh, I just need to double check. Like, I know in America, I don't want to get into a long drawn out conversation about like different types of insurance or whatever. I'm just saying that under a national health service, you can have a child. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to give birth, basically. Now, I see here you're quoting me these 4 figures here, but vaginal birth with and without insurance, C-section with and without insurance, and I'm seeing a range here between, I mean, you're talking either $7,500 when you're on insurance at its cheapest, or if you're on a C-section, no insurance, like almost $18,000. And I'm thinking, Jesus, that is far too much money to be paying.
And that is in my state, in Colorado. Some states are some states are much more expensive. Some states are less expensive, but I think Colorado is kind of more mid-range. But I mean, you're looking at upwards of, you can get over 20 grand. And by the way, these figures are for births without complications. So this is not including any life-saving stuff. This is, everything goes according to plan. It's, the figures are astronomical. And this is for private insurance. The state health insurance is much, much better, but you do have an income cap on that. So it's for low income individuals. And like I said, my surgery was like $3. I don't even know how much it would have been on insurance or without insurance. I'm sure it would have been easily thousands with insurance, and probably, closer to 10. I mean, this is just me guesstimating from my understanding of the system, but probably closer to, like 10K without, and it's.
Yeah, it is crazy. I'll say where I come from, those that do plan on having children, the catchphrase is, if you want to have children, have some money in your back pocket first and then go do it, But that's when you're on like a national health service. So for the American, like you and I are both Westerners, but we come from different cultures, What's it like for the American, really? I mean, if you're just looking at just for the birth, 10 grand up front, that's not something we'd have to think about where I'm from.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, in America, there definitely still is a huge segment of the population that believes that you need to have children. Like, there is certainly a push for that, but I think that in America there's more financial barriers. And I mean, the costs are just astronomical, and you're coming into this, you know, medical debt is a leading cause of bankruptcy in America. So you're looking at, you know, coming right out of
Wait, what was that? What's the cause of bankruptcy?
Medical debt is a leading cause of bankruptcy in America.
Medical what?
Medical debt.
Oh.
So, you know, we're talking, you're possibly going in for, you know, 7.5 to up to 17.7K, you know, just in my state alone. And, you know, better doctors, better hospitals are going to cost more. It definitely is. And if you want to also talk about just in terms of the risks of giving birth, our maternal mortality rate is, I think, the highest of all developed Western countries. We rank up there with the Sudan.
Yeah, just take that one slowly. I was like, I couldn't believe it. Just, you say infant mortality, death rates during birth. Is this how this works?
It's maternal mortality rate. So it's the woman dying.
Oh, okay.
During birth. So it's the mother dying, maternal. I haven't looked at the infant mortality rates, but
okay, no, it's fine. Or yeah. Just sticking on that maternal then. What are the figures for the mothers dying?
So these are from 2015 that I found, and generally, kind of averaged out. For example, in one of my links or one of my sources, I think it was the highest maternal mortality rate in Europe. I forget which country it was, but it was like 9 point something per 100,000 births. So that's 100,000. And ours at that point was 26.4. So almost triple. And I mean, if it ranges from, you know, a Black non-Hispanic woman, it's 42.4.
Jesus.
And as a white woman, it's 13, but it's still, you know, it is, you know, even our lowest number is higher than that of Europe.
Of course, yeah. I wouldn't be here to make a competition out of it. Those are dark figures, actually. Myself as a European, I would certainly say that, I mean, if you're telling me that maternal mortality rate, America, are you saying it's number one in the world or just number one Western nation for this? What is that?
Number one Western or developed nation. I don't know in terms of like all countries. I know that we do rank up there with third world countries. Again, I don't know if we're the highest, but our numbers are more in line with third world countries.
Okay, so my problem with this as a European is that, you know, it's no secret that America runs quite a few things around the world. You have a foreign policy. And so then, you know, with America being regarded as a number one, with maternal mortality rates being that high, I find that a shock, because if you're America, which is a rich nation, there's money in America, we've known it for a long time, and I just feel like you should have, I mean, you are smart as a country, you know, there is science. So how is it that if you're number one around the world, as it were, back home domestically, maternal mortality rates are of a similar range to a third world country? It just doesn't make any sense to me, actually.
I mean, it's honestly, what we're number one in is not great. Like our number ones are within Western developed countries, maternal mortality rates within the world. We have the largest prison population, as in like number of people. We have more people in prison than China even. We, you know, and I think part of it is just healthcare. Our healthcare system is so messed up. We, you know, people, these especially lower income women have trouble just their access to healthcare. And, you know, if you can't access it, how can you make sure that you're having a healthy pregnancy and a healthy birth?
That's a dark sadness upon the America. That is a sadness. I'm sorry to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to our next point that you brought up, and again, thanks for your research. This is so informative. You're talking about the cost of raising a child in the US, not including college and school. Like, what's that look like?
So the study I found was from 2017, and it had a figure from 2015. It was saying to raise a child from like newborn, and this is not including any cost from birth or prenatal care, to 17 years old is on average a little over $233,000. And they're projecting in 2020, which is this year, it would be closer to $284,500. And this is, this is needs, this is very little budgeting for extracurriculars and, toys and all of those things. This is just food, clothes, basic clothes. And this is not including college either.
When you say college, do you mean like secondary school, like when you're a teenager, or do you mean like university?
University. We have elementary school, which is until about 10. Then we have middle school, which is 11 to 13, and then we have high school, which is 14 to 18. And so, yeah, college is university for us.
Yeah, no worries.
Clear that up for everybody else.
Yeah, no, I thought that's $250,000 US, and it's just like I don't know anyone that has $250,000 US in their back pocket. So it's like, I don't know how, if you don't have the money and you're in America, then how do you actually afford this? You're saying debt, you just take on new loans or something, or what's going on?
It's a lot of debt. It's a lot of scraping by. I know people who are, struggling, they're 2-parent households that both people have to work. And then it's, trying to calculate out the cost of childcare versus the loss of income if one parent stays home. And it is definitely, we are at a point where on minimum wage, you cannot support a family of 4. So, if you can't have, so it requires, a minimum wage, at least 2 incomes, possibly other jobs, hoping you have insurance, health insurance.
It is in moments like this where I do I know I'm living in Vietnam, so there's no NHS in Vietnam, to be fair. But it's like when I'm back home, just getting seen for free is pretty sweet. There's some things that you can pay for, actually, and there's some things you have to pay for, like aspirin. It was so cheap. I think it had just been decided, it costs, £1.50. Let's not put that on the NHS. You can afford to pay £1.50 for aspirin or whatever.
Yeah.
When you get to these bigger subjects, I don't know, there's a lot of debt. Actually, it is a bit scary. I do find it a bit intimidating.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, that was one of the reasons that I chose to get my tubes out, was worry about being able to afford my birth control pill. Because when I wasn't on insurance, I would get a 3-month supply, which is, I was on the one where you'd only have 1 cycle every 3 months. So that's 4 cycles a year. It was, over probably, if I remember correctly, around $100 or more for a 3-month supply, just for that prescription.
Yeah, I do wonder, I think you can get that for free again on the NHS, I think. There's this lot of, when it comes to business, you'll have say you want to start a business, right? You want to move forward, but guess what? You've got a financial barrier of some sort in front of you. The airline industry is a really good example of this. There are huge financial barriers to starting your own airline company, and huge financial risk. I just feel like these financial barriers probably, it's a bit awkward that they're involved with having children. There shouldn't really be those financial barriers, I think.
Yeah. Which is why a lot of people in my generation, I'm a millennial, are actually, especially in America, choosing to put off having children or even foregoing it completely. There's so many articles being like, millennials are choosing dogs over kids, and it makes sense. They're cheaper. It's not costing $250,000 US, or over $250,000 US to raise them 1 through 17, assuming your dog lives to 17. You're not, you pay for vet bills, but it's not been what it would be for a child. the costs are just so much less, and you still have this, lovely being that you love, and you don't have, or it's also like the responsibility. If you have to have, two people making money just to afford where you live, you can leave the dog at home. For, while you go to work. You don't have to worry about childcare. You can go out to dinner without having to worry about finding a babysitter. It's, it's a viable option for people in my age group.
Of course, yeah. Now, I'll certainly say that where I come from, I can hear the voices screaming from the audience already. Like, having a dog and a child, two different sports. But I think, thankfully, you touched upon that. Like, it is different. I mean, you used to have a child is not a dog, and vice versa. And there are huge differences in responsibility to that, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's definitely differences in responsibility. And I mean, I don't even want to say necessarily responsibility, because I feel like you are absolutely responsible for your child's well-being. You are absolutely responsible for your dog's well-being. But the care required is different. The needs required are different. I have seen this a few times, but I definitely, pets are not substitutes for children, in that you can't have a pet and treat them like they are a human child. I love my dog. She is my baby, but I recognize that as a dog, she has dog needs. She has things that she enjoys that children don't. And it's wanting to give her as, happy of a life as possible. And that is recognizing her needs versus a child's needs, which again, make it easier. Like I said, you can leave your dog at home while you go to work. You can go out to dinner. It's so much easier to ask somebody to watch your dog for the weekend than to watch your child. And I have a lot more freedom with her, and God, I adopted her when she was a year old, but even, if you have puppies, there's, maybe 6 months where you have to like really worry about potty training them and taking them outside. And that's different than, like years of infancy. Or, since I adopted her when she was around a year old, I didn't have to worry about any of that, infancy stuff. She could hold her bladder. It was, so much easier than having a human child, which again is a reason that I'm choosing dogs over kids.
I hear you. I want to touch upon next, you'd mentioned like a lack of parental leave. What have we got there?
Yeah, we're the only nation, it's like out of 41 countries, I think it's developed countries, that does not have paid parental leave. And by parental, I mean both the mother and the father. We have, I believe it's mandated maternity leave, which means that the mother can take up to, I think it's 6 or 8 weeks off, and not risk losing her job. But that is not paid unless you have like sick leave or PTO. And even then it's only those hours that you have. So if you have 2 weeks of PTO and you're gone for 6 weeks, you can only use those 2 weeks of paid time off. You don't get paid for the other 4. And in terms of paternal leave, like fathers taking time off to help, with their newborn, it's practically unheard of.
Yeah, that is true, actually.
Job security.
I do wonder, back home, I mean, folk do mention like things like paid maternal leave, and they talk about it like it's a good thing, and it is a good thing. But I remember they would say it, and I was like, well, sure, yeah, it's obvious. But you're telling me then that there's no paid maternal leave. You are telling me there is no paid maternal leave in America. Is this true?
There might be companies that do, but it is not required by law. So if there are companies that do, it is certainly not standard, and you are not seeing it in minimum wage jobs by any means.
Okay.
Or, jobs where you can't afford to lose a paycheck. You're not seeing that.
Oh God, yeah, that's true actually. Okay, that makes a lot more sense, yeah.
Yeah, so so having, a baby, it's a hit right out of, you're being hit with the cost of the birth, and then you're being hit with, a loss of a paycheck.
Yes,
on top
yeah.
of it.
Yeah, because you're not working, so no money coming in, just working further into debt actually. It's a shame. Carry on, go ahead.
And then on top of that, you have to, do the numbers to see, is it cheaper to, and I mean, you're getting a financial hit, but is it going to cost more to go to work and pay for childcare, or is it going to cost more to stay home and lose that paycheck? And, lower income parents have to do this. And I think that's just because we don't really have paid childcare here either. You're paying for nannies, you're paying for Montessori school, which is like a kind of like a preschool for infancy, you're paying for all of that. So
yeah, it does add up. Like, it does add up. Like, moving on to the next points. This is strongly worded. You had said an attack on reproductive rights. What can you tell us about that?
So this is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart as someone that doesn't want children. And we have had a movement in this country to criminalize, or at least make it legal to practically push out abortion, including misinformation, like direct misinformation. And there's been a few politicians who've talked about with ectopic pregnancies, which I talked about earlier, that, are life-threatening. They're like, oh, well, you can take the embryo out and reinsert it in the uterus, and basically all doctors are going, no, you can't do that.
What did you say? Did you say take the embryo out and reinsert?
Take the embryo, and put it into the uterus where it would grow, and that's medically impossible. And there were doctors who were coming out of the woodwork saying, whoa, you can't have that in a bill because that's medically impossible. We don't have the technology. And also have the very
Go on.
And also the very sad side effect of women who did want to have a child and they had an ectopic pregnancy, and they're coming to their doctor saying, hey, I wanted this kid. I wanted to be pregnant. Why can't we reinsert it? And they're saying, I'm sorry if you've been given false hope, but it's not medically possible. I'm sorry that, that pregnancy wasn't viable. So it's hurting people all around. And, certainly that was something that led to my decision to get my tubes out, was access to abortion. If I became pregnant and I did not want to have a child, being able to make that choice for myself, because I am pro-choice. I'm pro-women choosing to be parents. I'm pro-women choosing not to be parents. And the other, I guess, issue is there's a lot of defunding in terms of low-cost clinics that also provide abortion services. Our big one is Planned Parenthood. Which, it's in the media a lot about abortion. But when you look at, how many services, like how many times they're helping an individual throughout a year, only 4% of those instances are abortion. They also provide STD screenings. They provide cancer screenings. I know at least 2 women who would not be alive today if they were not able to get low-cost cancer screenings at Planned Parenthood. They provide birth control. They even provide prenatal care. So if there's a low-income woman who is pregnant and she wants to get care to have a healthy pregnancy, she can go to Planned Parenthood. But it's been, this push to defund them and take away those vital resources for people.
So you're telling me then that I had heard of Planned Parenthood. I didn't quite know what it was, to be honest with you. You're telling me that at a Planned Parenthood, is it a building or an office? I mean, it's not a hospital, is that right? It's got doctors. Oh.
Yeah, it's an organization, and they have, multiple locations all throughout the country. And it has doctors, nurses, everything. And like I said, it's health services. It's just reproductive health services. So, and for a woman being able to get her annual and stuff, she can go to Planned Parenthood. So it is, it's vital for reproductive health, whether you're talking about not having children or having children.
That's quite cool. Yeah. So if an individual woman could go in to a Planned Parenthood, go through a system to have an abortion, or go through a system to get like better health and better health checks for the child, and that's all under Planned Parenthood.
Yep, they do they do prenatal care along with, like I said, STD screenings, cancer screenings, which are so important for cervical, uterine, ovarian cancer. If you don't catch that, and especially with our our health insurance system and our health system in the US, I mean, that is break the bank or die. So it is vital for, you know, for cancer screenings and even birth control, because the birth control pill is also it's a medicine. It's a hormonal medicine that happens to stop ovulation and therefore can be used as a birth control. Like, I was put on it at 14 for everything but birth control. I was having very, very bad symptoms with my cycle. I was missing school because of those symptoms. Yeah, they were nasty. And they put me on birth control, and I mean, it cleared up. And it's also used to treat things like polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is, you know, very serious, and and endometriosis. Just a lot of, you know, very serious, very painful conditions can be treated with the birth control pill.
Oh, that's quite cool, actually. I've also heard there's like some side effects to birth control pill. I have been told that sometimes the birth control pill, you can put on weight, for instance. It actually does like target your hormones and whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting you should bring that up. I didn't know that about birth control, with the pill, actually, sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a bunch of different ones, and there's a bunch of different, like, they have different hormonal concentrations and different, you know, you could have, you know, 50% this hormone, 50% this hormone, you know, changing the ratio. And so if you don't tolerate one, you can change to another one. And if you don't tolerate birth control, I mean, that's not your only option. They have, you know, there are a lot of other options.
Okay, cool. So just to double check here now, you because you said an attack on reproductive rights. Now, you've explained to me, thankfully, what Planned Parenthood is and the benefits that it provides. I don't see no attack here, actually, now that you mention it.
So I was kind of going on that. Obviously, when I say attack, I mean that there has been a concerted effort politically within our political system, because this is, you know, laws and bills being put forth.
Legislation and whatnot.
Yeah, legislation put forth to limit reproductive rights. So there's, like I said, a lot of misinformation. There's, you know, it's been a push to eliminate abortion access, which is a right. We had that go through the Supreme Court. That's Roe v. Wade. A woman does have a right to an abortion. To limit, you know, how early you can have an abortion, and some of those limits, you know, based on just a few weeks, a woman might not even know she's pregnant by that time. You know, she might not know she's pregnant until 8 weeks, but if the ban is at 6 weeks, you know, she can't. And this is also including, some of these are including non-viable pregnancies. So it's, you know, if a woman comes in and you know, she's having a miscarriage, they can't perform basically an abortion service to take that out. If a woman's coming in and they're saying, we are so sorry, your baby is not compatible with life. It, you know, birth, you know, you're going to have a stillborn, or it's only going to be alive for a couple hours. And you want to make that decision to spare that, you know, that,
okay.
You know, your child pain, and, you know, because there's no chance of life. It's just going to be pain and then done. And, you know, there's been an attack on that. So women are going to have to, you know, give birth to babies that they're going to hold for like maybe a couple hours and then like let them die in your arms. And I think that's so sad. And, you know, even some life-threatening pregnancies where it's, you know, like the mother could, if it's, you know, the mother's life or the fetus's life, then it's doctors are worrying about, am I going to get in trouble for performing an abortion, you know, on this woman? How in danger is she? How long do we wait before I don't get in trouble? You know, how long do we put her life at risk until it's too late, you know? And, you know, and then they've been trying to basically defund Planned Parenthood, which is basically putting them out of business, which again, this is a vital service. It's a vital health service for women, you know, who, for so many things, it is a health service. And again, to help with prenatal care, and they're defunding it. So these low income women are having trouble, you know, getting the services that they need to live and have a healthy pregnancy if that's what they choose. And you're also seeing a resurgence of people who are, you know, desperate not to have a child, and they take not as safe routes, and they lose their life because, they feel powerless. And then also, efforts to take away like hormonal birth control access. I mean, as a woman in this country, that is something I so worried about, was my health, my ability to decide whether or not to have children. It's definitely, it's a little scary, especially when you give our maternal mortality rates and all this other stuff. It would be different if you had, the maternal mortality rates of Europe and, affordable health insurance, and you're not going to be going into, such debt. And, it's forcing people into not so great situations.
Yeah, you've covered quite a few topics there, I don't know, I just feel that, if you're going to be having a child, it's a big thing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of happiness. You're dreaming, really.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
things go wrong, you want it to be going smooth at least and whatnot. It sounds like maybe that's not the case, perhaps.
Yeah, I have friends and family who have kids, and they love their kids, and they want to be parents, and I support them 100%. They're great parents, but it's hard. It is so hard in this country. If you're not already, upper middle class, if you're lower income, it is incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And it's a difficulty as well. I mean, why I feel, human's human at the end of the day, and we are talking reproductive rights. It'd be nice to think that the amount of money that you had, actually, it shouldn't really have much of a bearing on it. Perhaps in raising the kid, but just the birth bit. I mean, it's a lot of cash, a lot of financial barriers and that. And you'd mentioned medical debt. It's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, in my country, there are people who make GoFundMe campaigns asking for people to help them just to pay for chemo or even insulin.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's definitely, and then, do you want to bring a child into that system? What if you have a child who has medical needs?
Yeah, there's a lot to think about. Actually. And if you don't think about it, then you're walking into it pretty hard, and then you're getting an even harder shock.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing too is that, it's our foster care system is not very good. So if you give the child up, there's a chance that they're not going to have a very good upbringing, which obviously can happen even if you live with your biological parents. But it's setting kids up, for difficulties. And absolutely, there are foster kids who have done amazing things, who have overcome all adversity, but it is definitely, it is difficult.
Well, this is it, actually. They're just, on that matter, I mean, even if you're born somehow into suffering, somehow, whether it's one thing or another, at least you are alive to be able to chip through, try to beat the system or whatever. To be alive isn't a bad thing, certainly not. But then, of course, certainly there are more barriers for some people than there are for others. Is that systematic? Is that correct? Is that the right word I'm looking for?
Systemic?
Systematic, or maybe it is systemic. Maybe you're right. Go ahead.
Systemic. Yeah, it's just, I think I would love to see in this country a change where you didn't have to worry about your child's, standard of life, standard of living, where you didn't have to worry about, is your child going to eat? I mean, we have, kids who have to be on school lunches because their parents can't afford lunch. And if they miss school, they may miss a lunch. And that's just the way it's set up in America. Yeah, it is definitely.
It's a minefield.
Yeah, and like I said, I would love to see where people could where it would be easier for people who want to be parents to be parents. And there's always going to be people like me who are like, you know what? No, thank you. I don't want to raise children. I'm going to be an amazing aunt someday.
Yeah,
I'm going to be the cool aunt who's like, yeah, brownies for breakfast and your bedtime is never.
Oh my God, they're the best ever. Like,
yeah, like I said, I love my friends and family's kids, so I will be super aunt. And having no children of my own, I can just spoil them and be like, haha, go back to your parents now, and here's all the sugar. Have fun.
Yeah. Now you had mentioned here like birth rates are going down.
Yeah,
what's the crack there?
Birth rates in America are going down. I think part of that is, again, my generation is just they're foregoing having children based on, financial situations. We've inherited we came into adulthood at a very economically challenging time.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been set back financially quite a bit. There's people who are saying, I just can't afford to have a kid. Or I don't want to bring a kid into this world, into the current climate where, there are all these issues. Or I don't want to bring a child into this world to a planet that is dealing with all of, this climate change. And again, we're choosing dogs over children. But it is, so our birth rates they are continuing to fall. We'll see when the generation after us, Generation Z, when they start reaching a point where they're having kids, we'll see, if the birth rates go back up. But at least for millennials, it's been going down. And I have friends in my peer group who would love to have children, and they're looking at these numbers and saying, I can't financially, support having a child right now. And I think that is so sad, because some of these people would be amazing parents, and they're having this barrier of financial barrier, and it's, again, for me, childless by choice is a choice, and I want people who want to be parents to be able to be good parents. So it's sad all around.
It is. It really is. You had touched upon the education of abstinence. As we're on this topic of child rates or like birth rates going down and whatnot, there's also, you're saying there's abstinence-only education. What can you tell me about that?
So abstinence-only sex education is basically, they come in and, it's a health class. It's, reproductive education, but it's based almost solely on don't have sex until marriage. So you're not really getting birth control, information on birth control or information on STDs and how to prevent this. And so, our teen, I've looked at some studies, and it looks like it doesn't necessarily have an effect on teen pregnancy rates, abstinence only versus other, whether you do abstinence only or, traditional education where you are being brought into all that information. But it does, from what I could tell from the studies, it looks like that STDs being spread goes up because these kids aren't being told, wear a condom. Otherwise you can get an STD, STI. And then it also there's a lot of studies say that it can be harmful to different minorities. And it's generally very, at least from the studies that I've seen, it's very focused on heterosexual marriages. You wait for a heterosexual marriage. So if you're...
Repeat that again, go ahead.
So it's very focused on wait for a heterosexual marriage. So it's, one man, one woman. So if you're part of the LGBTQ community, they're not covering you.
No.
I have friends who didn't even necessarily get abstinence only, but some of this education is very lacking where they didn't even, and I have a female friend and she didn't understand even the workings of her own biology. And she, confided to me something that was going on with her. And I was like, no, that's not shameful. That's normal for your body to do that. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go into it, but, trying to explain
of course.
the natural function means that you're healthy. you know, like, you're okay.
Mm.
And she thought that it was, you know, this, you know, something was wrong with her.
It's an odd thing, actually. Yeah, the sexual, like sex education. When I was young, I think we had just started secondary school. So we were 12 years old, and we were all taught sex education. Everything from how, you know, blah, blah, blah works to blah, blah, blah works. Here's your STDs, here's your birth controls and whatnot. It had even covered abstinence. We were actually told that abstinence is, in fact, you know, if you want to avoid all these hiccups, and like, it's a complicated, it's something so simple, there's a lot of complications. So certainly we were told, like, abstinence is, it does work, but we're also going to teach you all of this stuff. And that was like, I'm talking, that was like 1996. And I remember there had been a whisper of some discontent. I think one or two parents had said, look, our kids are 12, why are you teaching them sex education? They're not going to be having sex until they're 18. And I think our school had said, like, we're just doing it now at 12, they're walking into it, don't worry about it, you know. There can be some controversy, certainly, but
well,
I would certainly rather have it than not have it, the sex education. I'd rather know than not know.
And I think, you know, a lot of, you know, schools, it's not like they're saying just have sex. They are saying, you know, abstinence is an option. You know, abstinence does, you know, obviously you're not going to have any issue. You know, you're not going to catch STIs and stuff if you're completely abstinent. But, you know, also that, for example, oral sex, you can get an STI from oral sex. So
yeah, that was covered. Yeah. Go on.
Like if you're going, oh, well, it's just, you know, heterosexual intercourse is like what they're saying, don't do that, then, you know, you might be missing out on other acts that they might go, oh, well, this is okay. And they're not protecting themselves. And, you know, one thing I've noticed is, at least in my experience, some of, you know, the sex education was, it wasn't just about sex. It was also about like reproductive systems. And so having that when you're like 10, 11, 12 for a girl is very important because, you know, your body's changing and you're likely going to be starting, you know, to have your cycle and to, you know, be able to go, wow, okay, so, you know, I'm not dying because I'm bleeding, you know, for 5 days. And understanding what's happening and all the changes that your body's going to go through and that it's, you know, natural and normal and, you know, you don't have to freak out or think that you're weird or gross.
Oh, no, because it's a tough time when you're a teenager. Your body is changing. There's going to be a lot of questions. So just to recap this one, though, let me just recap. So the abstinence only is, in fact, just to like tie this into what we're talking about, you're telling me that there is an abstinence only education just to two parts of America, not for every American, and that whilst abstinence only is to promote the lack of having children somehow, it turns out that the abstinence only education, in fact, as a result of it being like less education, it actually it increases birth rates. Is that right? And increases risks?
So I would say abstinence only education kind of ties into the reproductive rights in that there is a push to have abstinence only education. And again,
okay,
you know, it's a choice to have kids or not, but what it is it's setting up it's saying that sex is wrong before marriage, and there's also generally a bit of shame in there, especially for women. Like, if you have sex before marriage, you're used, you're dirty. You know.
Oh yeah, that's said. That does get said. It's a horrible myth.
Yeah, and so it's not even necessarily about not having children. It's about not engaging in any sexual activity until you are married, and therefore sex is to have children within that marriage. Whereas, you know, I obviously have taken, you know, steps because you know, sex shouldn't be, you know, basically just for babies, I guess. You know, you should be able to take steps and enjoy, you know, a partner, consenting partner, but this is, you know, it looks like some birth rates, you know, kids are understanding how to protect themselves from getting pregnant, you know, because they don't necessarily want to be a teenage parent. And it's, again, you know, very there's not a lot of information for kids who aren't straight, and it's really just lack of being able to protect yourself and make choices, I would say, is what's going on with abstinence only. It's not promoting not having children, it's promoting not engaging in sex at all.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were told when we were kids. It's like, it is explained that way. And I'm glad that's why back in 1996, Northern Ireland, we were taught everything else. Here's the abstinence bit, which took like, I don't know, I'm not saying it took 10 minutes to teach, but you've got all this other data that you actually need to get through. This is science. And thankfully, we were receiving it. But, you know, that's what I'd received in Northern Ireland, 1996. You know, we're talking about America 2020.
Yeah, it's like I think there's a lot of schools that do, you know, especially in the more liberal states, the states that have, you know, I don't want to go too much into politics.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I'd rather not.
That have a democratic leadership that's, you know, by Democrats, because we have a federal level where it's kind of like the entire United States legislature, and then we also have each state has its own legislature. So it's like it's like federal level, you have to do this, and then states like, and also this bit. So, you know, generally the states that have Democrats as their leadership tend to have more liberal leanings. They tend to have sex education that's more comprehensive, and then states, some more conservative states are leaning more towards abstinence only, and there has been a push from the federal government to give funding for abstinence only education versus comprehensive. So it is a legislative issue.
Legislative.
Yeah.
Well, I'll certainly say this, like, I'm a foreigner to the America, and I mean, human is human, you know, and I really do hope that regardless of wherever you come from in any of the states across the American Federation, you know, when it comes to having children and everything, you do want to minimize suffering. You want to increase the happiness. And I hope that you can all get the education that you would need for such a situation, because it really doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Ting, maybe you're having a baby, you know what I mean? And like, you need to know what's all up there, like, certainly.
Oh. Yeah, and I think, you know, especially, you know, there are high school kids who have had children and have, you know, been successful and raised them, but I think it's certainly a lot more difficult if, you know, you're in high school and you're trying to raise a baby and you're dealing with, you know, childcare costs and, you know, trying to finish your education, or the barriers if you don't finish your high school education. You know, it can definitely, it causes, again, it's not impossible to overcome that, and there are people who have, but it definitely makes it harder to, you know, again, have a baby. And and
good.
I guess one other thing that I just like to touch on really quick, back to abortion, is there's a lot of talk, I know, about kind of that you're ending a life, but I personally am here because of abortion. My parents got pregnant when they were in college, and they chose to terminate that pregnancy. And my sister and I were born, you know, after they had graduated college, and, you know, years after they were set up more financially. But if they had had that baby, my sister and I wouldn't be here.
That's an interesting take. That's a nice take. That is a nice take.
So it's not always ending a life. It's, you know, kind of lives are here because of that.
Indeed. So when we get into the whole choice again of like not having children, like, do you think many people regret it?
Yeah, I linked a study, which you can link below, that it's generally no. You know, there are people, it looks like, who are childless involuntarily, where they're having, you know, fertility issues, and there's definitely regrets there from what I can tell. But for people who make the conscious decision, I don't want to have children, there's very few people who have regrets. Like one of the people that my dad talked to when he was trying to wrap his head around my decision to get my surgery, was someone who had worked with women and women's organizations, and she told him, hey, listen, I've worked with women who have had these surgeries, who have made these decisions, and years later they're still happy with their decisions. They're not regretting their decision. And I would rather not have a child and regret it later than to have a child and regret it and put an innocent life, through my regret. Not that I would in any way want to harm the child, but just, I'm sure they could pick up that psychologically, or, and so I would rather not harm, I would rather run the risk of regret than run the risk of psychologically harming a child, even if I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
So, and there are always options, like adoption is an option. And I know
that's true. Like, that is true.
Yeah. And there are tons of people who maybe don't want to have kids, but are still involved in kids. I know people who, they want to be teachers, teaching, for us, our high school, which is our last,
Oh, the tertiary.
Yeah, high school and, younger. And they don't want to have children, but they want to teach kids. I know people who, they want to work with children, but they don't want to personally have children. People like me who, we're happy with dogs and we can't wait to be amazing, aunts and uncles, but we don't want to personally have a child. So just because we're choosing not to have children doesn't mean that we're not going to, positively affect a child's life.
Oh, yes. I'm glad you said that. Well done.
And, and again, like I've got maternal instincts towards dogs, so I'll have dogs and I want to, help rescue dogs, and that's other lives that, that I'm positively affecting, and the other outlets for maternal instincts. It's just, plus, honestly, childbirth and pregnancy are, as a woman, horrifying. I respect women who choose to go through it, because I have looked at some of the side effects of being pregnant and some of the things that can happen to you, and that aren't even necessarily life-threatening. They just sound really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Goodness me. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think part of the thing, too, that I do have to go a little bit back into people, their opinions, is at work. I work with a bunch of engineers, middle-aged guys, and they were trying to tell me, oh, you'll change your mind. Oh, you'll want kids. And I'm like, you don't have to run the risk of like these things. And I did list them, and they're like, oh, but you'll change your mind. I'm like, but you don't have to actually. It's easy for you to say. You don't have to worry about experiencing this.
Yeah, that's true. I'm really happy about that. Not to rub it in any woman's face, but I'm actually really happy I don't have to do this.
I have to say, on the flip side, I'm happy being a woman in that I never have to worry about like somebody having my baby and like they coming back later and being like, by the way, you're a dad, when you want to be childless by choice. So I imagine that's a risk. Like, I would notice if I had a child. There's not going to be a surprise.
Indeed. Well, like, we are sadly out of time right now. What do you have to say to the women that do want to be mothers and those that decide that, they don't want one?
So, that do want to be mothers, I can't necessarily speak to the rest of the world, but in America, know these figures, and do what you can to be prepared, understand the health risks, and be on top of your doctors. Like, make sure you have plans, because I want you to be mothers, but I want you to be safe, and I want you to be able to be there for your child. And for women who don't want to have children, or I'm going to say individuals who don't want to have children, because there are men who are childless by choice as well. Yeah. Don't let people shame you into something that you're not going to be happy with. Don't listen to everybody else trying to shame you if you know what's going to make you happy, and just follow your dreams, and don't let anyone try to push you into something that you're not comfortable with. So, which again includes both men and women, because I think being a parent should be a choice. And yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time and effort that you've given us here today. for this event. This whole thing, I mean, your story is a very personal one, and thankfully you've come on the show and you've been able to explain a few things and show us a lot of good stuff. Like, thank you so much. What you've done for us is a really good thing. Thank you so much. Now, to the audience at home, thanks for joining us, folks. I hope you find this informative. All right, you can see the data links below the video. Hit subscribe, leave your comments, and of course, on your way home, have a safe journey, and may your God or your gods go with you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.
And cut.